Well, hello everyone, and you join us here today, Tom and I, to talk about watches and to talk about fruit and to talk about both of those things with a special guest, because we have here owner, founder, marketer, director and coffee boy, Richard Bence of Studio Underdog. Hello, Tom. Hello, Richard.
Hello.
Hey there. How are you?
Yeah, we're really good, thank you. Tom, you good?
Yeah, all good, thank you, yeah. A pleasure to be here with you, with Rich, not so much you, Andrew.
I like that. Yeah. Already we're 1 minute in and we've got Richard and Rich, so there's just a couple more Ricky and Dick to tick off, and then you've got the whole team.
Yeah, that's funny. So it says on your Meet the Team, you've got Richard the founder, Rich head of design, and Ricky marketing manager. So yeah, is it just the three of you, or is there any more?
Three musketeers at the moment, i.e. just me, but yeah, looking to expand the team. If you know anyone with with that same name, I think that's part of the culture now.
Yeah, that's going to be quite limiting, but fun. And well, speaking of fun, what on earth are you doing here? What do you do?
So what do I do? So I'm Richard. I am currently the watermelon man, as it were, I guess. I've created a brand in the midst of a pandemic, and for one reason or another, it seems to have struck a chord with the wider watch community. Now,
I in doing some more research into your brand, discovered, as you said, that you started in lockdown. And I was surprised because in my mind, the watermelon watch has been seeded for much longer than that. It feels like something I'm very, very familiar with. And so when I saw your message come in, Studio Underdog, I was like, oh, he's the watermelon man, as you have been affectionately become known as. But you only started in lockdown, making watches that look like watermelons and other fruit and things. How on earth does something like that happen?
How on earth does something like that happen? Well, it happened to me. It was a bit of an accident, to be honest. I'm a designer.
You were in a fruit store.
I was in a fruit store and that was it. I had a eureka moment, and no, not quite. There was no eureka moment. It was just lots of baby steps, to be honest. So I'm a designer, studied product design, and always wanted to go into that industry. And once I'd finished my degree, I took the first possible job that was involved in design that I could, based in London. And that happened to be for a watch distribution company. And at that point, I had, dare I say it, I'm not sure if I'd ever really worn a watch, or at least I didn't have a particular interest or passion in it at that stage. But of course, I borrowed my dad's watch to the interview because there's no way I'm going to a watch distribution and design company without wearing a watch. And did that job for 6 years. Started designing character watches, Peppa Pig, Darth Vader, and anything in between, and enjoyed it. Moved on to some other watches. I was the designer for Braun or Brown, a German brand, which is a rich history, even in the watch space, really.
Yeah.
And then over lockdown, my sort of rebellion from if you know anything about the kind of the principles of and the Bauhaus style design ethos of the Braun brands. This was my sort of rebellion from that color and playfulness and fun, really, whilst still being sort of slightly functional. So it was pretty much just a design challenge and a project for myself during lockdown, during my spare time whilst the pubs were closed. And I just tinkered away on that, really.
I think 2020 might go down as the most productive year in human history. Honestly, what an advertisement for universal basic income. People go home and they start brands and they do cool stuff like that. So we'll talk about your other watches, other watch designs as well, but the watermelon one is the one that is forever imprinted in my brain. You spoke about Darth Vader and Peppa Pig. So stuff that is very laden with very litigious IP. Watermelons, on the other hand, they're free for everyone to enjoy.
I was going to say the exact same thing, because when you said, oh, I kind of feel like I've already seen this watermelon, I had the same thing when you said, oh, we're getting these Studio Underdog watches, the watermelon watch. I was like, Is that like a reissue? Is that like the keyboard tie or like the kitty cat clock with the swinging tail? It's like, is this like a famous iconic watch? But no, it's brand new. So yeah, that was my question. Is it like, can you patent a watermelon, or are you one day going to have to be like Studio Underdog, the original home of the watermelon watch?
Well, we'll see. I mean, I think, inherently with watch brands, so much of it is about history. So to have none really, I think can often throw people off. But it's funny that you say that it's almost sort of recognizable, or you feel like you've seen it around for a long time. And that was almost part of kind of the design process. I wanted to use fun colors. I wanted to kind of lay out the dial text in a unique way, sort of break kind of traditions, whilst also making it look somewhat recognizable and, almost like, you've seen it before. So there's a lot of kind of design cues that I've taken inspiration from vintage watches. I feel like, if you look at some of my watches in kind of, in black and white through a black and white filter, it then becomes more recognizable. It looks like it could be a vintage piece. And that was actually part of the goal, and that's what I wanted to achieve when I started designing it. So the case, the shape, it's very traditional. The strap, I like to keep the colors quite simple and monotone. And then I let the vibrant dial, the colors, and the playfulness of the layout kind of do the talking. And it's a bit of you roll your wrist, and it's a bit of a punch in the face, really.
Nice.
Something I actually found, because you very kindly sent us the watches over and said, like, have at it, and I very rudely hung on to them for quite a while for reasons. And the consistent comment that I had when I showed them to people was like, oh, that's the watermelon watch. I love that. I'd probably pick the Desert Sky or the Goofy Panda or the Mint Choc Chip. So I don't know, again, this might be strategic or it might just be happenstance, but you've created a halo piece that some people who are bold enough to buy and wear will buy and wear, but actually that's the eye-catching moment for people to then see the watches that they would and are more comfortable to buy and own.
Yeah, exactly. That was, to an extent, that was done on purpose. Obviously, I wanted the watermelon as the hero piece because it's going to be the one that catches the eye. But when I originally launched, I expected, the watermelon to catch people's eyes, but then they might sort of see the Goofy Panda, which is the sort of the most traditional colorway of the bunch, and say, oh, actually, no, this one's sort of more in keeping with my style. But to get visibility onto those, I wanted that punchy piece that people would remember. But funnily enough, the kind of the data says otherwise. Of the watches I've released so far, the Goofy Panda, the most traditional, that I thought would possibly be the most popular because it's the most wearable possibly, was the least popular, and the watermelon with its the incredibly punchy colours was the most popular. That's the one that continues to be the one that people want. And it's quite interesting to see, and I can just put that down to now. I'd imagine my audience, they have a lot of or they have watches that tick that traditional box, and there's nothing quite like the watermelon watch. If you for one reason or another have decided you want a pink and green watch, you're probably going to end up stumbling across my brand. You've not got that many choices. So that's just seems to be how it's ended up.
Let's talk about proportions, because proportions are something that I would say is probably the most difficult thing to do in a watch design. And I see so many big brands getting so close and yet failing at the last hurdle. One of the other things, the secondary appeal that your watches have for me, one, the colour caught my attention, but the proportions seem to be so excellently judged. Little details like the diameter of the case, you've got the big eye chronograph subdial, you've got the skinny pushers and the skinny crown, even things like the gradient in the dial all seem to be so well judged. You're a designer, obviously that's your thing that you do, but there are designers at brands like Longines and massive companies like that who don't seem to manage to quite get that right balance. What would you say is your secret sauce?
Secret sauce, good question. I think what I'd credit that to is once I discovered the industry, I was so enthusiastic about it. I'd read all the sort of newness, the articles, I'd look back at vintage watches. So just out of pure habit, I was just absorbing all this information. And when it comes to sort of watch design, you do have to have all these references. I obviously had the freedom in the fact that I don't have a back catalogue to look back on. But of course, I would see what I was attracted to from other brands, from vintage watches, what I was drawn to. So in terms of kind of the case design, I wanted something quite kind of, traditional and vintage inspired. And then when it came to the kind of the dial details, I wanted to achieve something that was a little bit in between. And I think a good example of, kind of part of the natural process of designing the dial in terms of its layout is I wanted a big eye just because that's quite fun. That's quite funky. So that's where I started. And because especially making the big eye a prominent color and the smaller seconds counter on the left sort of more blended in and less obvious, it kind of instantly creates an imbalance visually in the dial. So I was then sort of, okay, I've got this imbalance. How can I offset that? How can I, flip that on its head and give balance to the dial again? And that's when I came up with this concept of sort of staggering the text at 12 o'clock. So you've got the branding just above the big eye, and then you've got some additional text about the movement to the left. And then that sort of helped to create this balance, as well as allowing the chronograph hands, to pass through straight at 12 o'clock. Because for as long as I've worn a chronograph watch, I very rarely have the kind of the chrono hands, moving. I'll do it occasionally just to, time an egg or whatever, as the modern chronograph is typically used for. And I often leave it at 12. So I just thought that all sort of worked and it all kind of clicked into place. But that's just part of, of any design process, really. Finding some issues, trying to resolve them, and until you come up with this formula that seems to work. And I think that's what I've managed to achieve.
I noticed that you use the word fun a lot, and I kind of almost feel like this is a case of show don't tell. You don't have to tell people that it's fun. It's just fun. I'm having fun, and I'm like, yeah, this is awesome. And I think that's a credit to the brand work that you have done here to achieve that. That's what you do. You're a designer. You think about those sorts of things. What you want is a watchmaker. So how did you end up going from a really cool looking watch on a piece of paper or in InDesign or Illustrator or whatever to a physical watch that you could sell to people?
So that would, I was very fortunate in the fact that, I'd had 6 years experience in the industry prior. So I had, I've been to a number of suppliers in Switzerland, in the Far East, and, I'd made some great contacts over that time. Because otherwise, trying to kind of get a watch manufactured during lockdown when you can't meet people would be near on impossible. And I can't imagine how stressful that would be. Whereas once I got to the point where I had my kind of designs and I had my concepts, I knew instantly who I wanted to work with, people that I had a relationship with, that I've met and considered friends, really. So those were the people that I sort of reached out to. And again, I'd imagine a lot of kind of manufacturing partners would possibly see a concept like mine and just almost say, do you know what, it's not a project for us, or, we don't want to work on this. But because I had that relationship and I had that trust, my suppliers and my manufacturing partners were willing essentially to take a bit of a risk. And, I think it's worked out really well. So that was very, very fortunate, really. And I think that's allowed me to bring products to market relatively quickly in the grand scheme of things. And and make the brand appear that it's been around for longer than it has, really.
Yeah, you've not been around for very long. Do you remember the point where you transitioned between, oh God, I'm spending a lot of money and I don't know if this is all going to go down the drain, to hang on a minute, this is working. People like this thing. Because I see that you've sold out yet again. That must have been a pretty special moment.
Yeah, well, I mean, so I recently restocked the core collection in April and was trying to work out how many I might sell, but it's so difficult as a new brand. The data that I have is minimal to try and figure out what the level of demand is. We see in the watch industry, watches being difficult to get is commonplace. That's, my watch is being sold out. That's not by design. I'm not trying to make them kind of, I'm not trying to follow that model. It's just, as a small brand, I produce them in batches, and I sell them as soon as I have them or once they're nearly ready. And yeah, in April, I launched the largest amount of stock that I've ever kind of, manufactured, and again stock sold out within, I believe it was 6 minutes, which is crazy. Wow. I can't quite believe how many people are missing a mint chop chip inspired watch from their collection, but apparently is plenty of people.
Yeah, I mean, we're now at the position where anyone who knows me knows I'm a stingy bastard, and I've a number of times I've come close to buying the watermelon, but I actually can't. I can't. You are. I'm going to put you on my naughty list of brands I can't actually buy a watch from.
Yeah. It's not by design. Not by design. So I'm working towards a point where they'll be slightly easier to get. But time will tell. And there's plenty more of fun, playful designs in the works. And I'm already kind of developing some newness, which I'm excited about. So plenty more to come.
Do you think we'll talk about your new stuff in a second. Do you think that the ability to write the words sold out on product helps with building up anticipation for the next drop of stuff? Do you think that you would see a dip in performance if you just had readily available stock?
That's a good question, and I'd imagine that is a question that a lot of brands would love to avoid. But for me, I'm quite happy to kind of talk openly as to how I think that has affected my brand. The first thing is because, again, it's not by design. They're sold out because they're produced in relatively small batches when compared to the level of demand. And what this means is, customers probably feel more comfortable that they are getting a product that if they don't like or they're unsure about, they have the confidence that they could either return it or sell it on. So I've seen even, somehow there's a secondary market sometimes for my watches where they'll sell for slightly over retail, which at first I wasn't sure how to feel about that. But what it makes me feel like is in the watch world, customers are so used to not just making a purchase based on whether they like a watch. They also will look at, well, am I going to lose money as soon as I drive it out of the dealership, as it were? Mm-hmm. And even though my watches are at an entry price point of £500, I still think to an extent that's the case. So for people to see that, if there's a secondary market for it, if, I have it for a couple of years, or I decide that I'm not sure about it, or I want to move it on, they can. So I do think that potentially has an influence on whether people would like to make a purchase, because they know if they need to get out of it, they can. And I think that goes, typically you'd expect that thought process from watches at a higher price point. But I think you do still see that, even for my watches, or at least that's a possible consideration, really.
You mentioned new stuff. Can you share anything with us?
I can share a little bit. I've kind of been, up until recently, I've sort of been keeping it under wraps because I've been developing some samples, and really you only sort of know when a project is kind of going ahead when you've got samples in hand. Mm-hmm. I could be the best designer in the world and have all sorts of amazing CADs on my computer and illustrations, but until you have it in the flesh, that's sort of when you know. And I'm happy to say that I've got some samples in literally earlier this week on Monday of a field watch that is in development. But yeah, I'm excited about them there. I've been kind of thinking about it for a while and really hoping that the samples would come out as I'd expected, because this is essentially the second album. You know, people have been really enthusiastic about my initial collection, and these watches are going to kind of, you know, cement as to what the DNA of the brand is. Am I just the watermelon man? Am I just, you know, every new watch, it's, you know, it's a pink and green dial? Not necessarily. I think there might be a little bit more to me and to the brand. So yeah, I'm excited about it. Yeah, I'll be sure to share them with you as soon as I possibly can.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Excellent.
What's the pressure, if any, that you've received to go Swiss?
Not too much, to be honest. You know, I think I like to be very transparent, which I'm sure it probably comes across even just in our conversation. And the long-term goal and what I want to do is work towards improving my quality or giving, better products wherever I can. So even since the initial launch, so since, just over a year ago when I started, I've made some changes to the watches. Now they come on a handmade strap from the UK, a guy called David, who runs the Strap Tailor. He now makes all my straps. All the watches now are assembled in the UK by a lovely chap called Raphael, who's based in Reading. And I'm working with other small independent British businesses, and that's what I want to achieve. I'm not sort of aiming for Swiss made or sort of, made in Great Britain, because I'm not even sure if that's physically possible for anyone, let alone myself. But what I am trying to do is take those small steps and be as honest as possible that I'm working with, small independent British brands and doing everything I can to play my small role in the British horology, really. But yeah, lots of little baby steps to get there. But that's really what I'm kind of trying to do and would like to offer. I would like, at the moment, the movement I've got for these chrono watches is obviously the Seagull ST1901. More than happy to start looking at, Swiss movements. And that's something that I'm sure there's some interest in. But yeah.
Ricky, Vince, leaning a little bit closer. I've got a question for you. Would you be interested in doing a collaboration watch with us?
Interesting. I didn't know you guys did collaboration watches.
Yeah, nor did I.
No, neither did I, until I saw the one on your the aubergine on your site.
So why have you got a potential fruit inspiration or a favorite delicacy that you think would make for a perfect watch?
I think we might do. I think this is a conversation, if you're interested, that we might have to extend beyond this particular podcast. Dear viewer and listener, would you buy a Watchfinder co-branded watch? We wouldn't put Watchfinder on the front. That'd be ridiculous. Would you buy one? Let us know. Rich, thank you so much for joining us. It's been a real pleasure to talk to you about this. We have spoken to brands more big than small. So to speak to someone who has literally been 2 years in the game with his own brand is absolutely fascinating. So thank you very, very much. Thank you, Tom, as well, for joining us. And thank you to you, dear viewer and listener, for joining along as well. We will see you next time. Bye-bye, everyone.
Thanks a lot.
Bye.